With recent reports of increased violence in Somalia, our attention is once again drawn towards the Horn of Africa. Apparently, Somalia's interim government is losing an internal war to maintain peace in the country. There are reports of fighting amongst Islamist groups, with one of the groups, Al-Shabaab, claiming to be officially linked to Al-Qaeda. Is Somalia on the verge of collapse? Join me and an informed panel of guests in this edition of Africa Today.
Somalia has had no central government for 19 years and has experienced almost continuous conflict since the collapse of its central government. Last year, there were hopes that the election of former leader of Union of Islamic Courts, Sheikh Sharif Sheikh Ahmed, as president of a transitional government would restore order and stop the violence. After a year since Mr. Ahmed took office, the violence has erupted again. The latest figures of those reported dead stand at over a dozen. The main insurgents are Al-Shabaab, who the US accused of having terror links to Al-Qaeda. They have, however, come out officially in the last few days to confirm that they are aligned with Al-Qaeda. The attacks follow their incursions on government installations in the capital. According to reports, Al-Shabaab is fighting for power so that Somalia is ruled by Sharia law. With reports that other smaller groups have agreed to join Al-Shabaab, what hope is there for Somalia? Africa Today looks at why the situation is still out of control and what changes in policy there should be to avert the country from total collapse.
Indeed, hello and welcome to Africa Today with me, Vuiswa Ngobongwana. Here with me to discuss whether Somalia is on the verge of collapse are Mr. Abdullahi Wasame, a media editor with the Somali news website marig.com, and on my right is Mr. Abdul Odawa Mao, a creative producer. Also on the phone, we're delighted to welcome Mr. Mahmoud Delmar, a political analyst based here in London. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. If I could start with you on the telephone there, Mr. Delmar, Mahmoud Delmar, I want to ask you a general question. A lot of people may not be fully aware of what's going on in Somalia, but there's been an interim government since 1991. Is it true to say the country has been in turmoil since that period? Could you bring us up to speed?
Well, there is no uniform picture when one considers Somalia, the country that the world first knew as, a political entity that came of age in 1960, continued with different governments and different systems of governance till 1991 when finally that state collapsed. Since then, it has not been a uniform picture. The epicenter of the problem has been and continues to be in the capital, Mogadishu, and the adjacent regions. If you go further north, 300 kilometers north, and go to Bosaso, you will find a different story. It's still further north. If you go to Hargeisa, Berbera, you will again see another picture. There were chunks that has been more or less stable and enjoying some kind of peace. And then there's that picture that the world seems to be focusing on and seems to be considering the only picture. That's the war, continuous conflict ravaging in that area. I mentioned it. It is sad that, the regions that Mogadishu and the adjacent regions have not known peace as other parts of the country had known. So that's mainly the picture. And when you say, is Somalia on the verge of collapse, well, that's academic because basically the country that the world knew as, the unitary state of Somalia did collapse in 1991, or even before, the final nail to the coffin of the death of that, where political energy was when the late Mohammed Ziyad Barre, the dictator who ruled over the country for over 20 years, was chased out of the capital.
And the solution is still being sought, isn't it, Mr. Wasame? The recent reports that we've referred to appear to be some kind of interfighting between various Islamic groups. Could you give us a picture? Because we only hear about Al-Shabaab in the West, and the main news we hear about Al-Shabaab is that they're officially linked to Al-Qaeda.
Indeed, there is different and variety groups in Somalia. There's a TFG, there's a Hizb al-Islam, there is Al-Shabaab. These sort of group all are looking on the top. It is what they call the winners takes all. All got their sort of agenda. It's a ball, and each one want to control the other one, the upper hand. There is Al-Shabaab there, who's most active these days, and recently they announced that they are allied with Osama bin Laden, this group led by Osama bin Laden. I think they are ideologically with Osama bin Laden, but it hasn't been proven that they are physically get money from this Al-Qaeda or money. In the meantime, it seems to be a cry for help for Al-Shabaab to be noticed. One of the reasons I think Al-Shabaab, the problem they got is they got sort of lost a little bit of local population support because there's a foreign element in the country who doesn't know the tradition of the people, and there was some sort of a suicide and bombing and things like that, which is not the tradition of Somali people for suicide or killing themselves or bombing the populated area.
Right.
And they lose a little bit of control. And this seems to be a cry for help. The world to notice we are allied with Al-Qaeda.
Right, right. Well, I mean, talking about Al-Qaeda, it always seems to be sensationalized to a high degree, Abdul Odawa. But could you, as a media worker, because you produced films, how do you feel about the media portrayal of what's going on in your country? What are the missing pieces that you would like to see that give a more complete picture?
That's a very good question. Really, what makes it a little bit more difficult and confusing is still we don't have enough information, and always get some problems about philosophically or ideologically, and we're missing a lot of things. As a producer, I think the people need something to collaborate with the media, so the media can build up or will be collaborated on working with the peace process. So that's why we're preparing to do different projects about, invading, about giving good picture for the young people who already, have a lot of connection with the Al-Shabaab. So,
But indeed, if I could bring you back in, Delma, there is a very strong Somali-based media series of networks outside of Somalia. I mean, how do you feel about how the main broadcasters in the West portray what's going on in your country? What are the details that are missing for you that would make a more complete picture?
Well, I think, there's a false picture that, when one focuses on the problems and the ravaged areas ravaged by war, which indeed is very, very turbulent and tumultuous, and also very sad and tragic to see. But the picture is not only those areas. There are areas where there are elections, state institutions have been set up, concentrating and actually focusing on this area too, without necessarily, neglecting the main problem, which is the suffering and the misery that people, the normal people, the children, the women, the powerless, are actually continuously suffering in these areas where war goes on.
Sure.
So balancing that picture.
Sure. If I could just interrupt you a little bit.
Focusing on the areas...
Sorry, Mr. Delma, I'm just going to interrupt you a little bit so we can move the discussion on.